A German drone just hit 434 miles per hour on batteries. So here's two numbers from this week that belong in the same sentence. On June 26th, a German drone company recorded an electric drone hitting 699 kilometers per hour in straight and level flight. That's carry the one 434 miles per hour. It's an unofficial world record pending Guinness certification. Here's why this is such a big milestone. On July 7th, Bloomberg confirmed Ukraine failed to intercept a single one of the 23 Iskander ballistic missiles Russia fired overnight. Not one. The entire point of what Quantum Systems and their Ukrainian engineering partner, WIY Drones, are building is to start connecting those two numbers. The drone speed record and the fact that Iskanders are hitting Ukraine without consequence. Because Ukraine doesn't just have a missile shortage, it has a math problem. And I f***ing hate math. The missiles that stop Russia's most expensive threats cost millions of dollars each. Plus, there aren't enough of them. They won't be built fast enough, and the question the defense establishment doesn't want to answer publicly is whether a very fast, very cheap drone could take enough pressure off the upper end of that stack to actually matter. Well, the drone speed record is step one of that answer. Hey friends, Wes here, defense journalist, Army and Air Force veteran, and I hope you feel the need for speed because today we're covering a speed record, a missile shortage, a drone speed calculation that has some genuinely interesting implications for Russia's Air Force, and the honest answer to the question the headline is implying. Here's the assumption most defense coverage is operating on right now. Interceptor drones are the cheap, slow, Shahed-chasing tool you use to take pressure off the expensive air defense stack. You save your Patriot missiles for ballistic threats, your NASAMs for cruise missiles, and you let your Interceptor drones handle the Shaheds before they eat through your high-end magazine depth. Well, that hierarchy makes sense. It also assumes the Interceptor tier stays slow. Well, Quantum Systems in Germany just demonstrated that electric drone propulsion doesn't have to stay slow, and once it doesn't, the question of which threat tier a drone interceptor can realistically address, well, that starts shifting a little bit. Not all the way to fighter jets, not yet, but further up the threat ladder than most people are modeling. That shift is worth paying close attention to. On June 26th, the Munich-based company's N3XT team, or Next team, took their Apex Recordhunter drone to 699 kilometers per hour in straight and level flight. The current official world record for a battery-powered aircraft sits at 657.59 kilometers per hour. The Apex cleared it by 41 kilometers per hour. Now, official certification is pending with a formal attempt coming in the next few weeks. But the Apex Recordhunter was developed over about a year. It's a technology demonstrator, not a production weapon. Quantum has been explicit about that. What it does, though, is it proves that a specific propulsion architecture can hit speeds nobody's hit on electric power before, and several of the engineering innovations from the program are headed directly into next-generation interceptor work. That interceptor work is happening through WIY Drones, Quantum's Ukrainian subsidiary. WIY is pursuing two Ukrainian national speed records in the next few weeks. The Strela Interceptor, targeting the fastest FPV drone carrying a half-kilogram payload, and the SPYS, targeting the fastest anti-aircraft class FPV interceptor. These aren't airshow records. They're capability benchmarks directly tied to what Ukraine encounters on the battlefield every night. Quantum also has a separate interceptor program already further along. The Jaeger uses a combined electric and rocket drive, hits 4,000 meters in altitude in 30 seconds, engages targets at up to 25 kilometers, and operates on a hit-to-kill basis with no explosives. The company already supplies Ukraine with its vector reconnaissance drone. So this isn't a company learning what Ukraine needs. It's a company that's been in Ukraine long enough to know the answer. Oh, and one more thing worth naming, that 434 mile per hour number keeps getting compared to an unofficial New Zealand claim of 453 miles per hour by the Blackbird drone. That number was reportedly achieved downwind in a single direction. The Apex ran in straight and level flight. A certified two-way average and a one-directional downwind pass are genuinely different benchmarks, and until the Blackbird runs the official course, the comparison needs that asterisk. So, to understand why drone interceptor speed matters beyond the record book, you have to understand how bad the missile math has gotten. Global production of Patriot PAC-3 interceptors ran about 620 missiles in 2025. That's for the entire world. Ukraine, the US, Germany, Japan, Poland, the Gulf states, and everyone else waiting in that queue, sharing 620 missiles annually. During the Iran conflict earlier this year, Middle Eastern countries burned through more than 800 Patriots in a matter of days against a combined attack of 2,000 drones and 500 ballistic missiles from Iran. Ukraine's minimum viable monthly requirement, according to Defense Express modeling, is more than 60 PAC-3s just to pace Russia's ballistic missile campaign. U.S. production, headed toward 2,000 per year by 2033, is Lockheed's target, but Lockheed's own leadership told the Financial Times they can't guarantee delivery, timelines, or allocation priorities for existing customers. Yikes. The queue is long, and the factory isn't magic. Also, a PAC-3 interceptor costs somewhere between $3 and $6 million. A production FPV interceptor drone costs $1,000 to $5,000. That cost differential is not a rounding error, it is several orders of magnitude. Okay, so the Shahed 136 flies at about 185 kilometers per hour. A current generation FPV interceptor doing 300 kilometers per hour is more than fast enough to run it down. But Russia has been accelerating its drone program. The Duran 4, Russia's newer jet-propelled kamikaze drone, reaches speeds up to 500 kilometers per hour. That's the threat that pushed the requirement for faster interceptors, because 300 kilometers per hour on an FPV can't reliably catch a 500 kilometer per hour target from behind. It needs either a head-on engagement geometry, which requires positioning and prediction, or it needs more speed. Deagle, the Apex at 699 kilometers per hour, handles the Duran 4 in any geometry. That's not a marginal improvement. That's moving from sometimes possible to reliably achievable. Now, cruise missiles are the next tier. Russia's KH-101 and KH-55 cruise missiles travel at roughly 700 to 900 kilometers per hour. A drone interceptor at 699 can engage a cruise missile head-on, which produces a closing speed north of 1,400 kilometers per hour and a collision that doesn't require the interceptor to be faster than its target. It requires the interceptor to be in the right place when the target arrives. That's a positioning problem more than a speed problem, and it's one that radar queuing, loitering behavior, and predictive routing already addresses in current systems. So let's do the honest calculation on the fighter jets. The Su-57 Felon has a top speed of about Mach 2, about 2,450 kilometers per hour at altitude. Down at sea level, its maximum speed drops to roughly Mach 1.1, or about 1,350 kilometers per hour. Its super cruise speed, flying supersonic without afterburner, sits around Mach 1.3, or roughly 1,400 kilometers per hour. So the Apex hits 699, as we've said in this video. That's Mach 0.57. A tail chase against an Su-57 at any combat speed is not currently possible with electric propulsion. The jet is between 2 and 4 times faster depending on altitude and throttle setting. So the Apex can't chase an Su-57 yet, but where the math gets more interesting is ambush geometry. If you're not chasing the jet, but positioning ahead of it, the relevant calculation changes from relative speed to closing speed on approach. In a head-on geometry against an Su-57 flying supercruise at 1,400 kilometers per hour, the closing speed between the drone and the jet is 699 plus 1,400, roughly 2,100 kilometers per hour. The engagement window is measured in fractions of a second at typical manpad range distances, so whether a drone interceptor can execute that geometry reliably against a maneuvering 5th-generation fighter is a question the technology can't currently answer. And to build a drone interceptor with a practical engagement envelope against a fighter jet in the current sense of that phrase, you'd need something in the Mach 1.5 range, roughly 1,850 kilometers per hour. So quantum's not there yet, give them a little bit of time, but to generate enough geometric flexibility to account for jet maneuvering, engagement timing, margins, and the basic unpredictability of a fighter pilot who knows something is coming, that's 2.6 times the Apex's current speed. Now, the Quantum Next team has already said the 699 kilometer per hour number won't stand for long. Robert Gardeman called it an incredible milestone, but only the beginning, and said the team would be back soon to go faster. So the direction of the speed curve is real. Where it arrives and how quickly is the open question. The near-term honest answer on fighters is not yet, but the near-term honest answer on everything below Mach 1, the geometry is already there. So here's what the record doesn't tell us, because a drone hitting 699 in a controlled test environment and a drone interceptor functioning in contested Ukrainian airspace are two different engineering problems. The Apex Recordhunter specific propulsion architecture and technical specs haven't been published. Quantum got to 699 somehow, and that innovation from that program are headed into the WIY Interceptor work, but the path from speed demonstrator to fielded weapon still requires guidance integration, payload testing, countermeasure resistance, and the kind of operational debugging that only happens when things start failing in real conditions. Now, the Strela and the SPYS record attempts from WIY will tell us more than the Apex did, because those platforms carry payloads and operate under mission representative constraints. Those results matter more than the clean airspeed run. And the positioning problem is real. Getting an interceptor drone into the right corridor ahead of a target requires radar queuing, communications infrastructure, a human-machine workflow that is still being figured out under fire in Ukraine. So speed without queuing is just a fast drone flying in the wrong direction. But here's the thing about the direction of travel. Ukraine has taken fiber optic guidance, mesh networking, and a half dozen other technologies from demonstrator to operational deployment in timelines that Western procurement officials would consider logistically impossible. If WIY's interceptors prove the speed at the weapon tier, the workflow problem gets solved in the same way Ukraine always solves workflow problems: quickly, messily, and ahead of schedule. So here's the shift this speed record represents. When you zoom out, for 50 years, air defense has operated on a basic cost assumption. You use expensive guided missiles to intercept expensive manned threats, because the cost of missing a fighter jet or a ballistic missile exceeds the cost of the interceptor. You accept that this calculus is unfavorable for the cheap threats like drones, because the alternative, spending Patriot missiles on Shaheds, is fiscally incoherent and operationally unsustainable. Ukraine's war broke that assumption at the bottom of the threat hierarchy. Russia sends 200 to 300 drones per day. You can't meet that with Patriot. You need something cheap at the bottom of the stack so the expensive stuff can breathe. What Quantum and WIY are building is the first electric drone that's fast enough to handle not just the bottom of the stack, but a significant portion of the middle. Shaheds, Duran 4s, potentially cruise missiles on favorable geometry. That's not just a Shahed-chasing tool. It's a stack reliever that moves the line of what Patriot has to handle. Ukraine needs 60-plus PAC-3 missiles per month, and the global system produces 52. A drone interceptor that takes the Shaheds and the faster drones and possibly lower-speed cruise missiles off the Patriot queue doesn't solve the math, but it does change what the math is about. That's not a technology story. That's a doctrine story. Russia's air campaign was built on an economic calculation. Cheap attack drones overwhelm expensive interceptors, ballistic missiles exhaust precious PAC-3 stocks, volume beats the magazine depth of any defender willing to spend $6 million stopping a $50,000 drone. It's a sound calculation. It's been working. But the German engineers who've spent a year losing sleep over an electric drone just posted a number that starts moving one of the inputs. Not enough to break Russia's math today, but enough to make it worth watching very carefully over the next 18 months, as WIY takes what Quantum learned in a test field in Germany and runs it over Ukrainian airspace against real threats and real stakes. $699 on batteries with Ukrainian engineers in the room. That might be a record for the record books, but it's also the beginning of a new layer in the stack. That's it for today, my friends. If this was useful, hit subscribe. I cover this kind of development 4 times a week right here on YouTube. For deeper analysis, I'm on Substack, QR code on the screen, or just wesodonnell.com. And as always, Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. Crimea is Ukraine.